Stoller Vineyards.
Love that.
In Dayton. Yeah, sun is coming up on your Thursday. If you clicked us, you saw our topic for today, and it is about the homeless camp sweeps that are going to be happening in earnest now as we're getting kind of into the later spring and summer months. So the city of Portland announcing that they are going to now start doing more homeless camp sweeps. They really stopped doing that, of course, during COVID. And they're going to be targeting and prioritizing camps, homeless tents that are on sidewalks and right-of-ways, ones that might be fire hazards, in treed areas or fields, as we've had such dry weather. Sure. And we have seen a lot of tent fires that Portland Fire has responded to. And what was the third? The
third was any camp that is associated with criminal activity.
Yes.
Would be a third sort of camp. So they broke down into those three types as being the priority for sweeps. And the term they're using right now is they want to be more aggressive with their sweeps. I think we talked earlier today on the Sunrise TV show about pre-pandemic, before COVID, they were sweeping about 50 camps a week throughout the city, and that number is down to about 5 a week.
So as everyone has noticed, the problem has, up and down the whole West Coast has really ballooned in the pandemic. And Willamette Week, great story on Wednesday that I read yesterday. Partners from 25 of Portland's biggest law firms with space downtown had a Zoom phone call with Sam Adams, Portland's former mayor, who is now the czar of homelessness for Mayor Ted Wheeler.
Right.
In his office. And they had this call because many of these law offices, they have some of the most square footage leased to them in the downtown core area, are going to start bringing back their employees, most of them kind of like toward the end of summer in September. A lot of companies are kind of eyeing September now. And they say, okay, you got to hit summer hard because our employees are telling us they are, afraid, and rightly so, of parking downtown. Many of them haven't been to their office in a long time. They cited open drug deals, crime, and just tents. You kind of have to move around, and lots of issues with that. And Sam Adams, according to the Willamette Week, who spoke with multiple people who were in that meeting, described Mayor Ted Wheeler's plan to move homeless campers off and out of downtown into safe camping spots and sanctioned tent camps in neighborhoods around Portland. And he said, this has not been widely talked about, and they talked to these law firms about it, that the neighborhoods are not going to be happy about this. Now, no neighborhoods have been named. They haven't, announced where these sites are, but they want them out of downtown. So what do you guys think of that? What do you think of the homeless camp sweeps? If you work in an office and you're coming back, can you imagine yourself coming back to an office and seeing that? Like, what would your thoughts be?
I could share just a personal anecdote from my wife's situation, and as you guys I know are scouring the Facebook and YouTube feeds for our viewers' comments. Yeah. My wife Mia worked downtown off of Water Avenue in that mustard yellow building you can usually see off of 405. It's not too far from OMSI. The Olympic Mills Commerce Center.
Yes.
Thank you.
We have a camera there.
Yes, we do. So anyway, she worked there for a number of years with her marketing company. They all went home back in March, and she hasn't been to that office since. And in fact, they have given up that office space. They're no longer going to have it at all when they move forward. They've leased out a smaller space out in, I think, near Lake Oswego. Anyways, when she used to go to work, she would tell me pretty regularly how she was fearful for her life. And I don't want to over dramatize it. And sometimes, I'd be like, Mia, you're going to be okay. But how did I know that? She would talk about scenarios all the time where she would have to make a decision. After parking her car, you couldn't park right next to the building. There's not parking available. They gave her a spot in a lot a few blocks away from the building. She'd be walking, sometimes during the year it's 5 o'clock at night and it's pitch dark out. She'd have to make that decision. Do I walk right through basically this camp to get to my car? Do I cross the street, go around and circle it that way? Yeah. She said one time she was walking from her car into the building and she heard this man screaming. And she's, okay, the man's not, something's going on. But she tells herself he's not screaming at me until it doesn't stop. And it sounds like it's getting closer. And she looks back and he is absolutely screaming at her. She can't hear what he's saying, but he's pointing and screaming. And she's now nervous and she's walking faster. And the guy starts running after her. And so she is now with her bag running to the office building, goes into the building, that Olympic Commerce Center. Guy follows her in. She gets to the elevator, gets inside, and she is hitting that button, she said. Door closes and a hand comes through. This is true. This is all true.
Okay, that's like a
comes through,
nightmare.
and she said she didn't know. She did not know what she was going to do at that moment. She's like freaking out, and the can comes in, opens it up. It's another gentleman that works in the building, and he goes, "What is wrong with you?" And she goes, "Is there someone coming? Get inside, you know?" And he's like, "What?" And she goes, "Just get in." And then she tells him the story. They go upstairs. They call the police. But it was, that's her work day. Wow. Before you go to work, run for your life.
Right.
That's the situation that people are facing right now.
You never know what can happen. Yeah.
I mean, when I was working down at our studio on the square, and it was at the height of the pandemic and no business people were around, that's when you really saw the people who were left over, mostly homeless, mentally ill, drug addicted men. And I had to get down there like about 3 a.m. and I did have a security escort, thankfully. But I totally understand what Mia is saying. It's very unsettling and it feels very, very unsafe.
Are you guys familiar with Doug Fish? You ever work with Doug? He's been a long-time marketing guy in Portland. Anyway, that's the gentleman whose hand came through that elevator. And she said, I've never been so happy to see Doug. But he was like, "What? You just saw a ghost."
Yeah.
It was just a frightening situation for sure.
Yeah, no kidding.
We've got a couple comments on the
good.
stream this morning. I thought this one was good. David Gillette says there needs to be a designated zone for camping with services in an industrial area. So not downtown and not in neighborhoods. He's suggesting somewhere out in the industrial area. I think that's what I notice the most, being a long-time Portlander, is that once the industrial areas started being developed, like in the Pearl and beyond, it started pushing out the people who were camping there, scattered around, and you saw more of them because there was no place to kind of hide. Now, I don't think hiding is the thing that we need to do with the homeless situation. It's a much more complicated, deal than that, but trying to get people off the streets, because it's not working for anybody. It's not working for the businesses. It's not working for the people who work downtown. It's not working for the tourists. I mean, it is a failure across the board.
Hearing from a viewer named Alyssa, who says, "Drew, I work in the distillery right next to your wife. I know that distillery," and she would park my wife in a parking lot next to that distillery. Anyway, she says, "I know exactly what your wife means. I've actually had to stop a man one time from catching on fire right under the bridge there.
Oh my God.
That was on my way to work. Really scary down there sometimes."
Wow. Yeah, what is that called? It starts with an H. High.
Oh,
Desert
the distillery?
Yeah.
Darn it! I actually didn't.
H.
Yes.
Still tell us.
I've
Tell
done
us.
an out and about segment there years ago, but I'm still embarrassed that I can't think
Gosh,
of the
I
name.
can see it on the building.
It'll
Anyway,
come to you. Michael Garrison says crime has gotten worse in these areas. We need to do something about this as citizens of our cities and communities.
so these law firms on the call told Sam Adams in no uncertain terms, if the mayor doesn't start getting tents off the sidewalks by the time employees come back, the firms may well leave downtown as their leases expire. We'll be looking to change where we're officed. And even Sam Adams told the Willamette Week they were very clear. Portland is days away from receiving the state's sanction for office towers to reopen, but many of the employees who fill those buildings are reluctant to return. And then one attorney said, "I think it's fair to say that some of the law firms are frustrated about the state of downtown and they don't feel like there's a clear path forward." So one of our viewers mentioned, in an industrial area, and the mayor has, kind of teased this idea, but obviously was talking more in depth about it, neighborhoods. And putting toilets and, sink washing stations temporarily there and those kinds of services to at least corral people. But a lot of times when you talk to people on the street, which, I've been in this studio for the last couple of years, but when I was a, reporter, a lot of the people don't want to go to large camps or shelters because either they have PTSD or they have some type of anxiety where they're around, a lot of people, and they want to be by themselves in their own tent or off, somewhere else quieter, and they want to do their own thing, and whatever, legal or illegal thing that is, there is going to be a lot of people so what are you going to do? Are you going to force them to go to these camps? You can definitely rouse them out and harass to get them, off that street. But then what happens?
See, this is a good comment just to piggyback on what you're saying. Stephen Schick Morris says, don't like seeing what happens when you remove the safety net set up for the people who fall through the cracks. Homelessness, he says, was non-existent 50 years ago. I don't know if it was non-existent, but it certainly wasn't like this.
Yeah.
And I do have compassion for people who, for one reason or another, and they're myriad these days, have fallen through the cracks. And it's either not enough mental health services, or they're homeless, or they're living in their cars and they've gone from their cars then to the street. Whatever it is, drug addiction. Drug addiction is a medical condition. It's not a moral failing. We don't have a safety net for all these people, and we haven't for years. And this is absolutely, the snowball rolling down the hill to go splat. I mean, that's what we're seeing in downtown Portland.
Now, you remember last November, there was a ballot measure on that was approved for $53 million allocated for homeless services, and that is for just Multnomah County. Now, Deborah Kafoury, one of the chair of Multnomah County Commissioners, says she wants to spend that mostly on permanent housing rather than these temporary neighborhood camps. So her and Wheeler are now at odds with how to spend that money. And ultimately, he can spend, stuff that's allocated for the city, and she can spend stuff that's allocated for outside of city limits. But now we've got, city officials that aren't quite in agreement either.
William Mitchell says most of Portland looks like Skid Row. Can't blame liberals when they come from when they come from red states. I don't actually
understand that either.
I don't
Who's
either.
they?
But Skid Row caught my attention because in LA, Skid Row is enormous. It's dozens
like a
and
12
dozens
block
and no, it's bigger than that, of blocks, and it's like the Wild West. It's like they've just contained them in an area that's not right down in the business district, but it's terrifying, and you don't want to go down that route as well. I mean, I think that's a failing of society. But wow, I don't know where you start, but this can't continue.
No.
Nina, you mentioned that there are some homeless who don't want to go to those group settings, those large hubs, if you will. And you're absolutely right. We've talked about that before during our newscasts. We have to come up with some solutions, and they're not going to work for everyone, probably, right? We're trying to come up with solutions that will work for the majority. I did see an email. That's what I'm going to share real quickly. I hopped off the stream to go into my inbox because a viewer sent us an email last night, and the subject just said homeless problem. I thought, well, we're talking about that this morning.
Okay.
Let's see what this is about. So this viewer, Matthew, suggests that there is a system in Phoenix that he says is working. CASS. It's that stands for Central Arizona Shelter Services. And he says there is basically a huge hub in Phoenix where they have like one-stop shops for needs like medical, dental, mental health, job training, job services. The list goes on and on. Day labor companies in the area will actually go by this place in the morning and pick up residents who are staying there and bring them to work. And some of these people have gained full-time employment because of this opportunity. He says there are many services there that you should actually, he's suggesting that we send a reporter to Arizona to see how they're doing this, because he says it is being done well. And the email goes on and on, but basically says it is an example of how a city, if the powers that be can come together, can actually do something that makes a difference. So there's an example, apparently, according to this viewer, in Phoenix that is working, but it involves that centralized hub situation.
Yeah. And remember, and I think that's, ultimately, if we were not in a COVID pandemic like we are, that Bybee Lakes Hope Center, aka the Wapato Jail in kind of North Portland area, near Kelly Point Park, that's kind of supposed to be ish, kind of like what you're talking about, where people can stay, but also have services in one area. There's transportation that goes out there, and it is kind of away from neighborhoods,
the heart of the
per
city
se.
and the neighborhoods, right?
Right. So it'd be really interesting to see that place running at its full potential and capacity, and hopefully we get there soon to see what they're doing, because it's huge, 155,000 square feet.
Let me ask you this, and I don't know if you have other viewers' comments to share, but I'll ask you guys a quick question that came my way yesterday. I started to talk about this morning with you. I had a friend that called me yesterday who hasn't been downtown in over a year, like many people, but he knows that we work down here. So he says, hey, I've got family coming into town. They want to stay in downtown Portland. They even mentioned going to the Nines, which is one of our nicer hotels.
Right.
And he said, what do you suggest? Because the family they're visiting actually lives in Milwaukee. So, would you recommend a family member stay in downtown Portland right now? Or would you recommend that if they're coming into town for whatever reason, would you recommend they stay somewhere, out in the suburbs, maybe in Beaverton or in Clackamas, somewhere there where there's also hotels? I told him, I don't know why they would stay downtown, especially if they're visiting family in Milwaukee. I said there are hotels near the Clackamas Town Center they could stay at. If they want to check out Portland, if they've never been, if they want to drive down and see it and then make a decision on whether or not they want to stay, that's one thing. But I wouldn't recommend staying down there right now. That was my suggestion. I don't know if you guys all
That's a
agree or
tough
disagree.
one.
No, I'm going to say my wife had a girlfriend's weekend, and they ultimately went up to Seattle. But at one point, they were talking about being in Portland, and I simply said, honey, I do not want one of our cars parked on a street in downtown Portland even for one single second. I just don't.
Yeah.
But what about Seattle? What did she say about that?
Well,
Because that's
ultimately-
another city that's
they
got a
ended
problem.
Ultimately, they ended up staying in a hotel in Seattle where they had underground secure parking. I don't think they ever left the hotel. They just did the girls' spa and all that stuff for a weekend without watching any sports. They said it was fun. Okay.
Without watching any sports.
Stop asking questions.
Listen to this. Susan Decker says downtown may be bad, but the east side is hit hard with the homeless situation. I hope moving them involves the Nike Intel side of town. So she's like, yeah, we've got an issue across the river.
Right.
Go that way.
Oh, I see what she's saying. Move them that way. Yeah.
And this is not just a
It's
Portland
hard
problem.
because you switch counties that direction, and the money's different, and that homelessness money, is for Multnomah County, and you switch pretty quickly into, Washington County out there, and
Yeah.
And let's not forget about Salem. I mean, we have lots of viewers in Salem. Some of you may be watching right now. If you live in Salem, chime in. But they have a huge problem there as well. And it is as evident as it is here. If you're driving through Salem, we've gone there a lot over the last year for baseball tournaments. And this one park we played at last year, there were tents all over this park to the point where my boys are like, you can camp here? I was like, those people aren't camping here like the way you would camp, guys. Those people are here for good.
Oh, funny.
Until they get swept out. I mean, it's just a huge problem, not only in our city, but also a little south of here in Salem.
yeah. We have tons of people watching on YouTube, the most I've seen in a long time. So thank you guys all for watching. I want to read a couple comments. The Felon Attorney is the screen name. Permanent housing won't work without effective drug rehabilitation and mental counseling, and other people kind of weighing in on, yes, we definitely need more mental health help that's free to those people. He also says, what's scary is Portland is broken and it vastly contains most of Oregon's population. Let's see. Sven K says, why don't they provide more affordable housing? Washington County isn't hit like Multnomah County. So they're asking, more affordable housing. And more is coming online, but
I really wish we had somebody from Transition Projects here in our little square to talk about this, because a few years ago when I was living downtown, I paid them a visit, because that was back in like 2014, and it was a mess back then, not exactly like it is right now. But that place is amazing, and the work they do with the homeless and people who need help is amazing. They are like a resource in this city, but of course, the need is way too great. But I remember one thing that the executive director told me is that first and foremost, getting a roof over somebody's head allows them to address some of the other issues that we're talking about. Because somebody on the stream, I lost the actual name, but he was like, well, what good is a safety net if they refuse services? But sometimes if you address the drug addiction and the the mental health, they will be more amenable to services. But the Transition Project executive director said, you got to get them off the street first. That's the easiest way for us to help. And it goes back to, where are you going to put the affordable housing? What's it going to look like, right?
Yeah.
Now, I enjoy it sometimes when the viewers start talking amongst themselves on the stream, right? That's what happens during Sunrise Extra. And we had Norma Joe saying, you guys, talking about the four of us, are making it difficult to want to move to Portland. Don't you have anything positive to say? And then Brittany replied to that by saying, you know, Norma Joe, this is the reality, an everyday reality of living here in Portland. And then real quickly, one of our viewers was quick to point out, well, where'd you go? Don't give me 3 seconds, 2, 1. There it is, Barbara. Barbara says, it's also a very concerning problem these days in Gresham. Thanks for watching, by the way, Barbara. She says, a homeless man entered one of my neighbor's homes at night just this week.
Ooh, scary.
So that's in Gresham.
Scary. Yeah.
And then Brittany Chapa also said in earlier comments, she says there definitely isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, but the current situation is a one-size-fits-no-one. It's so sad. She goes on, she says, I am not judging. I struggled with homelessness myself, and I've been off the streets for 4.5 years now. I don't know what the answer is, but the current state of affairs is so disheartening. I think just about everybody would agree with that. Yeah.
She would have some kind of insight or answer, though. What was her story? You know, how did she end her homeless situation?
Yeah.
Because obviously it's not a one-size-fits-all, but, you know, I'm curious what her size was, so to speak. And
I think
and
a
how she
lot of it
managed.
is treatment and like having someone that, you know, you could meet with on a regular basis that could give you encouragement and pep talks and stuff like that. Because, you know, a lot of people, you're in that environment, you're living on the street and you're just surrounded by other enablers who want to do drugs also and want to, you know, it's not helping your situation. Right. If you are one person who is like, I do kind of want to get out of this, but I need to have surroundings that support that.
But seriously, if the four of us were living out there on the street, winter, spring, summer, and fall, afraid of the violence, afraid of
well, I'd be standing in that shelter line every day.
You know what? We would probably be on drugs too. You would numb out if you had to see that every day. I mean, I can see how it happens. I can see how the streets make you worse in every in every way, shape imaginable.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It's almost like a chicken and an egg scenario, right?
What comes first?
Yep.
Yeah.
Becca Hill says trying to get a drug treatment bed is nearly impossible. Long wait lists. People are trying. Forcing them to move, and we've heard this before, forcing them to move means their case managers can't find them when a bed treatment comes up, which points to the fact that, you know, a solution seemingly in the right direction would be some
sweeping camps then, yeah.
Well, some clean, safe place for them to be while they hopefully get enrolled in these transitionary programs.
So Brittany did chime back in. Thank you, Brittany, for doing that. She says, I'd be happy to share a little bit of my story, and she does it pretty succinctly here. She says, part of it was I finally was ready after 12 years of refusing help. She says part of it was treatment, absolutely. Part of it was family support, but mostly she said it was the fact that my heart was just ready. I did not want to live that way anymore. She's also, she says, 4.5 years sober right now.
Yeah,
big clap.
Congrats.
amazing.
Yeah, that's super powerful to hear from you. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Thank you guys all for sharing your comments. It's a big issue. We will do some updates when we know more. We'll see you tomorrow.